some also incredible insights in regards to channeling that I found very useful. One was that the disease basically said, spirit beings aren't going to come through you. I don't know exactly what they said, if you don't want them to. Like the person has to be willing. And then the other thing they said was that it's not also that the spirit beings are flowing through you, it's that the human is expanding their consciousness to allow this to happen, which I thought was cool, because I have had my own viewpoint of like, oh, these beings are just flowing through you, where it allows the channeler to take more personal responsibility in doing what they have to expand their consciousness, I believe.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And it's interesting because the people I have cautioned against channeling is people who are experiencing a lot of mental or emotional imbalance. Because I think, you know, if you're, and I've only met a few where that's true for, but there are certain people I'm like, no, you're dealing with a lot of trauma right now, and you're dealing with a lot of mental or emotional imbalance in yourself. This is not the time to try and call in something else, because you aren't in a grounded, rooted place in yourself. And, you know, I know a few people who have had some difficult experiences, but it wasn't necessarily because of the spirit. It was because of the foundation in them that wasn't necessarily able to hold or support the spirit. You know, when I get people to channel at my workshops or online events, I always say to them, the most common objection I hear after they have channeled for themselves for a few minutes and they're looking back at it, reading it or whatever, you know, one of the things I would always hear from people is, well, how do I know I'm not making it up? And I would always say, you are. And they go, oh, what do you mean? And I'm like, no, I don't mean you're faking it, and I don't mean you're lying to yourself, but you are making it up, and it's important to understand that it's happening. The Z's did not take me hostage and say, we're just going to take over his body to let this book come out. I give permission. I can stop at any time. I'm collaborating in the experience. And I'm a big believer in that boundary. I get messages from the Z's that I don't ask for about 6 times a year. And they're usually quite important life things that I haven't yet seen, or that they want me to get prepared around. But that will just be, you know, I'll be thinking about something or visioning, and I know where they come from, and I know the position, and I'll hear them say something, and I'm like, oh, and then I'll, what do you, and they're like, I'm like, oh, okay. But I have a real boundary around they don't have control over me, and nor should they. And if they ever tried to, I would back away, because no spirit should have superiority or control over you. And yet, because of the way that so many of us were taught religiously, we were taught, well, this is the keeper of the doorway to God or the doorway to Jesus, and it's either your priest and here are the rules, and we'll give you the rules, and you just have to follow them. And if you break the rules, you're a sinner or you're going to hell. So we have a lot in our society that has been designed to keep us away from spirit. In a way, you know, and I have friends who love their religion and their faith, and they use it so beautifully. And I know some ministers and priests who use it so beautifully to espouse love. And then I also know the ones that are espousing fear or organizing their congregation in a way that's disempowering to them, really, on a deep spiritual level. But the people in that congregation are exploring some level of spiritual disempowerment, otherwise they wouldn't be there. So, you know, it's not for us to judge anybody's journey, because we're all exploring different things on the planet, and often people elect to go into that to try and clean up the energy of it, but they might have to believe it 100% for 20 years before they then back out and go, oh, hang on a second, there's something wider here, and I'm here to be an ambassador of that. So I feel like I've gone off on a real tangent. What was the question?
Oh, basically just opening up to expanding consciousness.
Yeah, and I think the point is, I also had a very young view of what spirituality was when I, you know, my first 10 years in personal development workshops. And You know, I had that same thing many of us had, I think, which is like, wow, the facilitator's amazing. And wow, how did they do that? I was wowed because that energy had not yet become normal in my world. And actually all they were doing was showing me a doorway to something I also could access. And so I'm so grateful for those facilitators, but I no longer pedestal them the way I would have when I first went in there, because I know the danger of that for both the one put on the pedestal and the one pedestaling. Pedestals are very imbalanced, and they're something to grow out of and grow through. And we all do that in our own time. But I love the differentiation that you're highlighting that the Z's make, which is, do not give your power away to spirit, co-create with spirit. It's no different to being in a toxic friendship where your friend tells you what to do and you do it whether you really want to do it or not, because that's just the dynamic you're in. It's no different to going, well, spirit's told me to move to Canada, but I don't want to move to Canada. And I would say, well, then don't move to Canada. And they'll go, but spirit's told me, and I'll try and reach them. You know, I'll try and go, well, your body right now is shaking. You do not look prepared to move to Canada. So that's either really bad advice, or you're misinterpreting it, or you need to ask more questions. You do not have to do something because spirit said. You are spirit. So get really good at kind of allowing more spirit into your humanity so that it can all balance. So thank you for highlighting that part of the book.
Pleasure.